All right, MAHA news of the week for basically the last week of September here. We've got three topics on deck. That autism press conference held earlier this week, and then some statements from RFK Jr. and Trump related to health at the United Nations Assembly in New York. And then the Highwire, Del Bigtree, is getting a cease and desist letter from the Henry Ford Medical Center over their new documentary called An Inconvenient Study that has to do with a study that took place by a researcher at Henry Ford about 5 years ago that has yet to be published, that they're going to publicize in their upcoming Inconvenient Study documentary. We'll talk about that towards the end. But first, let's talk the Autism press conference. Now, I was genuinely surprised about how much vaccines were talked about during this autism press conference. And it was pretty clear that Trump took the initiative to be the only one to mention the vaccine subject. Dr. Oz didn't say anything about it. RFK Jr. made one brief statement, but didn't say much about vaccines related to autism. It was pretty clear that Trump took the initiative to spearhead that conversation himself as to protect those around him and take all the slings and arrows for approaching that subject. But I was genuinely surprised. I was not expecting much, if anything, to get discussed about vaccines, but a lot more than I thought would be talked about was talked about with vaccines and their relation to autism. A couple of the big statements that were made in relation to vaccines: Trump called for both mercury and aluminum to be removed from all shots. Now, the mercury one was not that surprising because in recent weeks, both RFK Jr. and Trump have made either statements or posts on social media talking about the relation between mercury preservatives in vaccines and autism. But for Trump to also mention aluminum, that was a big one because in reality these days, not too many vaccines still use mercury as a preservative, but a lot of vaccines have aluminum in them as an adjuvant, they're called. So it stimulates our immune system. But is that a good stimulation of our immune system? So Trump called for both mercury and aluminum to be removed from shots. He also called for the vaccine schedule to be spread out. Kids not to get so many shots in one visit, spread them out over multiple visits if you're still choosing to vaccinate your kids. That's what Trump was saying. And then RFK Jr. made a statement whereby he said a statistic of about 40 to 70% of mothers think that it was the vaccines that made their child autistic or regressed far further into autistic symptoms. So that was a big statistic to put out there. RFK Jr. said that the White House official page even reposted RFK Jr.'s statistic there that he relayed to the public. So there was a lot. There was actually a lot that was said and stated about vaccines playing a part in autism. But then there's also the Tylenol issue, which that was a big discussion this week. I guess officially the government, the FDA and health agencies, they're going to force the manufacturer of Tylenol to redo their labels to further state that there has been statistical evidence showing that acetaminophen use during pregnancy can play a part in neurodevelopmental issues of the child. But the reaction, man, not only the reaction from the establishment over vaccines, every single mainstream media outlet this week, there's no evidence vaccines play a part in autism. We've done the studies. Yeah, garbage. But also the reaction over Tylenol, because there are so many studies going back a decade you can find from medical journals or research institutes showing that acetaminophen use either during pregnancy or acetaminophen given to children causes neurological problems. There's so many studies out there. Even Tylenol's Twitter page themselves back in 2017 was found replying to somebody saying, we don't recommend using it during pregnancy. Yet, everything changed. Everything changed. Maker of Tylenol came out and said, no, there's no evidence showing acetaminophen use causes problems during pregnancy. The whole medical establishment. You had the freaking pregnant women on TikTok filming themselves just slamming back Tylenol to stick it to the man because Trump bad or whatever. Like it's literally insane. Literally insane, the reaction. and how Tylenol plays a part. Really, the main way Tylenol counteracts, or not counteracts, but amplifies. See, Tylenol or acetaminophen amplifies the effects of vaccines either during pregnancy or in children, because say you'll take a child in to get their round of shots, child gets a big fever, big reaction, headache, and then the parent asks the doctor, "Doc, what can I do?" Doctor just says, "Oh, kid must be sick, give him some Tylenol." And what Tylenol does, acetaminophen, is that inhibits the liver. It inhibits the liver from producing glutathione and important antioxidants that help with detoxification and mitigating oxidative stress, of which acetaminophen is. So it's an amplification. Child gets vaccines, gets sick, parent gives them children's Tylenol, then the liver can't detox what's making them sick, the toxins in the vaccines, and it's just, they're both cascading effects from each other. So Tylenol is the first one. Baby steps into studying and exposing more about vaccines. But I was genuinely impressed by that one. Next thing, let's talk about what happened at the United Nations. So first, we'll talk about Trump's statements. He basically called for an international end to bioweapons, which there's a lot that wasn't said there. Of course, you could say COVID-19 being fiddled with in a laboratory was a bioweapon, but there's also a lot of the evidence out there about bioweapons labs in Ukraine and really around the world. And it's real freaky that some of these scientists think that's okay to just play God and study these very contagious viruses and bacteria for what reason? For science purposes, but why? So Trump asked for international end to bioweapons, wants to create a sort of multi-country organization or program to limit bioweapons research. And then RFK Jr. said that the U.S. will reject a declaration on communicable diseases. Now remember, the U.S. pulled out of the World Health Organization again earlier this year, right after Trump took office. The World Health Organization is under the UN. It's an organization of the UN, a program. So basically the UN's declaration on communicable diseases, you could just say it's like another control mechanism along with the World Health Organization. So RFK Jr. said, "Go to hell, globalists. We're not going to deal with your global international health programs, whatever they are. So no, we're not going to do that declaration on communicable diseases." And then let's talk about the Highwire. So Del Bigtree leading the Highwire. Del Bigtree's been a big voice in vaccine truth for a decade now. He was the producer of the original Vaxxed documentary that went viral in 2015. Their latest documentary, by the way, there's probably 3 renditions of Vaxxed now, so it's a great series of films to show people, to wake them up to vaccines. Vaxxed, Vax 2, Vax 3. Their latest documentary is The Inconvenience Study, which is about a study on vaccinated versus unvaccinated people. This study was done about 5 years ago by a scientist at the Henry Ford Medical Institute. The trailer for the film comes out, I believe, in 5 days, 6 days, like next week. So the film's going to be out for free next week. The trailer for the film was premiered at a Senate hearing a couple of weeks ago, Senate hearing on vaccines and vaccine policy. Aaron Siri was a witness there. Toby Rogers was a witness there. And then that third witness was the pro-vax weird guy. I forget his name. But Senator Ron Johnson was spearheading this hearing. And during the hearing is when they premiered the trailer for the Inconvenience Study film. And that study was done, that the film is about, that study was done 5 years ago at the Henry Ford Medical Center. It was never published, and the alleged reason is that it was never published because the pharma industry, the medical institute, none of them would want to put it out. The researcher at Henry Ford Medical Center that did the study didn't want to put it out, allegedly for fear of being fired, fear of retribution. So apparently last week, the Henry Ford Medical Center sent Del Bigtree and the Highwire a cease and desist. They're claiming that Del Bigtree was putting out a bunch of defamatory statements about Henry Ford, alleging that it was defamation that Henry Ford didn't let the study get published, and this big problem, right? Every single time Del Bigtree comes out with a film, there is institutional and establishment backlash, ways that they try to censor it and suppress it. So we will see if anything comes from that. I don't imagine they will let that stop the inconvenient study film from coming out. But as soon as that comes out, I'll be posting that study all over the place on my social media handles. I will watch it. We will talk about it during next week's MAHA news show on Badlands Media, and I might even do a review of it here on these Conscious Strength channels. But there you go. MAHA News of the Week, last week here of September. Good stuff. A lot on vaccines, step by step. We are exposing the vaccine industry.